morning to everybody, including the small furry coworkers that have finally woken up this morning. So this morning's class is gentle yoga. So we're going to need a few props if you've got them. A blanket would be helpful. And in addition to a blanket, a yoga strap will do a really good job. If you don't have a yoga strap, you can, of course, use anything that will just extend the length of your arm. So a scarf or a towel, any sort of rope, dog leash, anything like that will work pretty well. If you have the opportunity to invest in a yoga strap, they're one of the least expensive yoga props. It's a good investment. So if you happen to have that opportunity, definitely invest in one. But otherwise, just grab something you can hold on to. And then a blanket is very helpful. This is a very thin blanket. It's not particularly thick. So if you have a big, thicker, like a quilt or something like that, you might wind up using half of it or using part of it rolled up and part of it flat. With a blanket like this, you could probably roll the whole thing. And that's how we're going to start today. So you just want to measure enough blanket that you can cover the length of your spine. And since I'm not very tall, I can probably fold it to there, and that'll get me pretty close. So once you've got that measured out, then you're just going to fold the blanket or roll it. Now, I like to fold it like into thirds so that I have kind of a skinny and wide surface if I want a very gentle pose, if I want a very gentle elevation. If I want it to be a little more robust, then I'll roll the blanket. I tend to roll it toward the fringy edges so you can smooth out a little bit easier. Then you'll get a much thicker surface, so that'll give you a little bit more oomph, a little more lift underneath your spine. Now, I'm going to do this in the thirds, and I'm also going to go down the middle of my back. You can go horizontal, which makes it a little more like a fish pose, or you can go long ways, and that gives you some opportunity to support your head. The bottom of the blanket can line up anywhere between the top of your pelvis and the middle of your ribs. I tend to go towards the rib cage resting on the blanket and a little less close to the pelvis. I like the swoop of my low back to pretty much handle its own curve and not be pushed around by the blanket. So, once you've got that in place, you've made some good decisions for yourself, then you'll just lay onto the blanket so that it's reasonable. And I've got my bottom ribs are about there, and so I've got the blanket just at that kind of area where the very last ribs are. And then I have this little extra bit, for my head, so I can fold it a little bit and make my head position a little bit higher. Now you can do a bunch of different things with the legs. So they can hold this position, which is called constructive rest usually, just kind of the feet rest on the floor and the legs can settle into the hip sockets. You can do a straighter leg. You can have either the feet touching each other in butterfly, or even just kind of cross at the ankles. For some people, that's a little more comfortable. So you can do any of those variations with the legs. I'm going to see. I think I'm going to go for straight legs for this first pose. And then what we're aiming for is for the shoulder to drop a little into space. So for me, it helps, like, if I just extend the arms and then let them go, they'll find their home just about in the right spot. But if you like your arms a little further out, or even in a cactus, you could do that. I hear a noise that makes me think that someone's up to something. We'll hope for the best. We'll just take a few moments to breathe. Now for just another minute or so, we're gonna pause here. So take a few moments and just feel the breath coming in and gently releasing. Just for a moment, can we find a sort of a sense of gratitude for this next breath that's going to show up here in a second? We quite often take the processes that our body does automatically for granted. But especially as of late, the breath seems even more precious than it used to be. And it was always pretty precious. So if we could just pause for a moment and feel that gratitude in our heart. Or maybe even a little sense of awe for the way that life is happening right in this moment, right inside of our own body. So I'm going to stretch my arms up and over my head, and then I'm going to roll myself over to one side, and since my arms are already there, I can just pull the blanket right out from under me. And then we're going to come back onto our back, and just for a moment, pause, and feel like, can you feel the sort of impression left behind by the blanket, if you had a blanket under there? Really interesting to me to kind of feel that settling into place. And then there's a kind of brightness and lightness that I experience around the front of the shoulder and the chest as a result of having been up on the blanket. So it's just really interesting. My arm bone feels like it kind of drops into the ground a little bit more. Just notice what's true for you, because you may feel different things. And of course, like, right now, during our class, there's going to be lawn mowing and other construction-like activities going on right outside the window. So I apologize for the extra noise today. Oh, it's just timing, y'all. All right, so we're going to do a little windshield wipers with the legs. Just kind of widen the feet out and let your hip go with the turning of the knee, just so they stay together. Now, we're going to start with the right leg up on top of the left. So I've got like pretty much the middle of my shin kind of on top of my thigh. So the legs are kind of about neutral, right? Like in terms of width. You could go more toward the ankle, and then this leg will go out at an angle. Just be careful of the knee. Just make sure the knee feels supported wherever you put your leg. And so we're going to pause here and just wobble again, kind of back and forth. So sort of like we were doing with that windshield wiper, but we're just gonna let this position hang out, and we'll wobble. Now I feel more intensity when I go towards the right, which that right leg is up on top, so I can feel those little muscles that support this leg working to hold that steady. And then on this side, it's a little softer. Just notice what's happening when you're doing it. Okay, so one more time to the outside, and then just allowing myself to pause here, we're going to take the hands behind the head. Now, the reason we're putting our hands back here is so we can push the head into the hands and secure the neck. So we're going to try to keep the neck nice and stable, and then using the abdominal muscles, especially these ones just above the navel, that come up to almost where the breastbone ends. That's going to be the primary action. The other abs will kick on as we come up. But we're going to start that action with those muscles curling ourselves up just enough to feel all that action happening, okay? So we're just curling up and then coming down. We're going to do 2 more straight up the center, curling up and coming down, and then curling up and coming down. Try to keep your head planted in your hand. We're going to take this left elbow towards that right knee, and we'll just bring the knee a little closer to the elbow as well. So 2 more like that. All right, so we're just activating the abdominals. So we're going to take this guy, bring him in, and if you can, get hold of your foot. Do that. So you've got a little half happy baby. If the foot is too far away, you can use your ankle, you can hold onto your thigh, or you can grab your strap and use that, because we're going to get to that in a second anyway. Now this left leg, we're going to stretch out and get a little bit active if we can. Toes pointing up, foot flexed, reach through the front of this hip. So while this leg is hanging out, we're stretching through this left leg. So it's almost like lunging upside down. Okay, so 1 more big breath here. And then we're going to release this leg. We'll give it a little kind of wobble back and forth. And this is where your strap is going to come in handy. So we'll get the strap. I'm going to put the loop part of it, if there is a loop. If not, just put it over your foot, and hold on to the ends so that I can hold on either to the loop, or I might be able to use the tail to go underneath my upper back. So it might depend on your strap, or on whatever you're using as a strap, as to what your options are. So we're going to press into the strap a little bit, and then you can bend the knee, and then press into the strap. See if you can send your heel up a little bit, and then bend your knee. And then you're going to find the spot where it doesn't feel like it's too much. Not too much down at this end, not too much behind the knee. We're just going to find the just right spot. You can rotate a little bit. We're going to stay here for about another minute. We're going to take a nice big breath. Now I've got a block and I've got a blanket, and I'm going to use both of these for this next pose. So if I put the blanket really close, maybe even right under the edge of my hip, and take my leg out, that might be enough support, and it feels pretty good. You could also take a block and kind of lean it into your leg so that your leg kind of hangs out with the block. Now the block and your mat may or may not get along, so you may have to do a little bit of fiddling with it to make it just right. But what we're looking for is a stretch in this inner thigh that feels like it's mostly in the large center part, not too much right at your knee, not too much right at your groin, just the right amount of stretch. We'll just hang out with that. Let my left leg just relax while we're here, but if it feels better, you can bend the knee and hang out like that if this pose is a little bit tricky. can take 3 more breaths. All right, so we're gonna take this leg back to the center. I'm gonna take the strap off, but you could continue with the strap if you like. I just have some space limitations. So I'm gonna instead bend my knee and take this guy over for the twist. And I'm gonna use my bottom leg as kind of a little thing to wrap around. So I'm just gonna wrap my top leg around my bottom leg. Get the shoulders nice and stable on the floor, and then you can extend out through your arm. And again, we'll pause here. Now again, if you have the strap, then your leg might be straight, but you can also do it with the bent knees. Take a nice big breath, and then we're gonna come on back to the middle. Now, we're not entirely finished. We're gonna unwind the legs, give ourselves a little bit of a rinse. Now, what I would suggest we're gonna do is we're gonna roll all the way onto our left side, but the problem with that is then you won't be able to hear me. So I'm gonna just spin around real quick, and then you can roll onto your left side. And you may decide that you want to use a block or your blanket as a little headrest. Okay, so we went from the twist on the left side to laying on the left side. This is the theory. And then you just need to double check that you've got a range of motion where your arm can go all the way over your head without nailing any furniture or knocking anything off of a counter or anything like that. So we're going to take this right arm, reach it out. The left arm is just going to rest on the bottom. And then reaching through the arm, we're going to go all the way overhead. Now, everybody may have a slightly different range of motion, but when we get to this point where the arm is about level with the chest, we're in an area where there's some potential issue for nerves that go through the shoulder. So you can either just come straight across to come back, or as you get to that point, you can soften this whole thing and allow yourself to come around without the reach, the extension in the arm. Okay, so from here, reaching through, reach, a little higher, a little farther out. As soon as you get to that halfway point, everything gets soft. We just come on back with the shoulder. Okay? And if you get any numbness or tingling in your fingers, definitely do a smaller range of motion while we're working on this. So one more time, we're going to go all the way up overhead, and then come on back. Give your arm a little rinse, and then we're going to come back onto our back and continue with the shoulder. So grabbing hold of this right upper arm with your left hand, you're going to pull it over to the left, then we're going to extend the legs out and get as heavy as we can in the right side. So you could even push yourself a little to the right with your left foot, and then keep pulling that arm over to the left. So we're trying to let the right side stay heavy, and then there's this resistance of pulling the arm across. And again, I want to choose a height that I can work with. We all have body parts we have to accommodate, so I'm accommodating body parts for sure, but we're sort of letting the body get heavy like sand while we're pulling with our left arm. One more big breath here. And we're just going to let that arm go. You're going to stick your right arm up in the air and shake it. Then you want to shake it kind of, you can do like little teeny tiny shakes. You can do bigger, like whole arm shakes. But kind of get a sense that the bones are getting a little rattly, even if it's kind of slow. That there's that kind of looseness to it. We're almost there. 2 more breaths. Seems like a long time, but it's worth it. All right, so then we're just gonna let that arm gently release to the floor. Give yourself just a chance to relax for a moment. I'm gonna stay where I am, so I'm just gonna pull my yoga props up here so I can reach them. But we're gonna do our other side. But I like to notice, like, does it feel nice? Like, does my right arm feel a little nice in comparison to my left? And generally, it feels like light. It feels a little lighter. It feels kind of pleasant. My shoulder feels very pleasant. So that tells me that I could probably do it again on the other side without any real changes. But if there's any tenderness or soreness, or it feels like hummy or electrical or a little tingly, then I would definitely make some changes. There's the nerves that come out of the skull, right here at the back of the neck, and come down through, and then go, there's a bunch of them that go right through this area between the shoulder blade, the collarbone, and the head of the arm bone. There's a little channel right in there, and it's kind of amazing, the nerves that go through that area. It's quite amazing how many of them are in there. And so they operate, of course, all the dexterity of our fingers and all the sensitivity and the receptive, quality. Like, our hands have to have tons of nerve endings because of the way that we work as humans. So we have all these receptors, all this nerve cells that tells it, that give us all this sense of really refined sense of touch and sensitivity on our hands. Well, all of that runs through this little area right here at the shoulder joint. So just being kind, I think, to that area is important. Having a healthy respect for that part of our shoulder and our neck. All right, so we're going to do the same thing, but on the other side. So we're starting with this position where we're just left leg is up on top, and then we're going to kind of drop ourselves back and forth, almost a kind of windshield wiper, except of course the one leg is up. So as we go back and forth, just noticing the muscles that kick on, and it could be different on one side versus the other. For me, my right hip is a little tighter, a little more intense. Left hip is pretty relaxed. And even moving back and forth, I can feel the same muscle areas, but they definitely don't give me as much feedback. I have to look a little harder. So one more time, just back and forth. And then we're gonna pause right there in the middle, and we'll come back to the center part of our core work here. So pressing the head back into the hands, and just curling the shoulders up a little bit, trying to initiate that action from these abdominals, keeping the head nice and steady. And again, it doesn't take much for us to really fire up those little muscles. Just feel yourself lift, and it doesn't have to be a lot of lifting. At some point when we're doing sit-ups, your hip flexors are doing the work. So we're just trying to really focus the work right in the abdominals, and then we're going to take the right elbow towards the left knee, and these are going to fire up the obliques on the sides of the hip, on the sides of our waist. So try to feel yourself lifting from that side waist, coming in. All right, so once we're down, we're going to pause for a second. We're going to bring this leg in and do our little half happy baby. So holding on to the left foot or ankle or thigh, whatever you're working with. Then we're going to give this right leg a nice big stretch. And again, for me, the right hip flexor is a little tighter, so I can feel the resistance to that, and my leg even wants to lift up because it's that snug. So I'm lengthening through the waist. I'm trying to let myself relax in this big belly portion of the psoas. And then where it meets the iliacus here in the bowl of the pelvis is where it gets really strong, right there at the front of the hip. So just allowing the muscle to both relax and lengthen. Just feel feel if it's letting go a little bit. And one more breath. And then we're going to relax that leg and we'll go for the hamstrings on this side. So, oops, that's not the loop. There we go. Extend that leg up. And again, you can hold onto your strap. Maybe there's a loop in it, maybe not. You could also, if you've got a long enough tail, you can stick that under your shoulder and across your back. And then your back will basically hold that up for you. So we're going to let it loosen up, bend the knee, and then go out to straight and feel. Like, does it hit your sit bone first or the back of your knee first? Or does it hit right there in the middle of your thigh? We're aiming for the middle of the thigh. So we want to feel the intensity, right? So as you extend the leg now to hold it, if you felt the intensity at the hip or at the knee, give yourself a little more space. Right on. And we'll stay for another minute or so. To retrieve my blanket. All right, so we're going to take a big breath, and then we're going to take this leg out to the side. So again, I'm building up a little bit of support with the blanket, and sometimes for me that's enough. It is today. If I wanted more, I could take my block or something else, a big pillow, whatever I've got, and then kind of stack that up to make it a little bit higher. And again, I'm aiming for the middle part of the thigh. If I feel it right here and the side of the knee, I want to be very cautious about that. I also want to be kind to the groins. We need those later. And if you tear that, either of those two areas, golly, is it really a long recovery. So you can even bend the knee a little bit. You just want to aim for that middle part of your thigh and be nice. It doesn't have to be an overwhelming sensation for it to be effective. I don't know what you're up to. Stop making so much racket. We're going to take 2 more big breaths. One more. And then we're going to come back to the center here. So I'm going to, again, lose the strap and just turn this into a twist. And you could keep the strap if you want. Stay for about 3 more breaths. So, come back out of the twist and unwind, but we're gonna roll onto our right side. So again, I'm just gonna make a turn all the way around. And then lay on the side. Again, make sure, just, without your arm completely extended, just like, am I gonna run into stuff? If the answer to that is yes, then jiggle around until you've got a decent range of motion, okay? All right, so then, with the arm stretched out, I'm gonna reach through this top arm, and through this whole first part of the range of motion, I'm stretching, and then I get soft and bring it around. So stretch, and bring it around. Stretch. Bring it around. Stretch it out. Oh. Okay, we're going to do it one more time. Okay, so once you're all the way around, we'll just take that arm, give it a little shimmy. We're coming back onto our back. We're going to let the right side, we're going to pull to the right side and let the left side get really heavy. Try to let that left shoulder blade try to find the floor by just kind of easing the weight that direction. But again, I'm pulling with my right hand to the right. A couple more breaths here. Let go. That arm's going to go up into the air. I'm going to shake it. Again, the idea is to get it really kind of loose feeling, a loose feeling shake, even if that's a little bit slower. My left arm is, for whatever reason, not nearly as coordinated as the right one. I should probably work on that. But in any case, I have to work a little bit harder to get that loose feeling. About 3 more breaths. Okay, so we're just going to drop that arm, and again, notice where it landed you. Notice how the arm feels in relationship to the right one, and just in general. So you can do a little back massage, and then we're going to come to a seated position when you're ready. Hear all these shenanigans going on in the background. Oh goodness. Okay. So if you are kind of have a hard time sitting upright really easily, the best thing to do is to use your blanket as a little seat. So you sit on it. And then once you're sitting on it, you're going to kind of slide to the edge so that it's just right under the edge of the sit bones. And this will kind of tilt your pelvis a little bit, so it's a little easier to sit up tall. Now, I think it's more comfortable as well. So we're going to relax the legs to the degree possible. If you need to straighten them out or sit in a different way, you can. You can even sit kneeling down between your feet. That'll be fine. We just want a nice stable base. So the spine has the kind of neutral positioning to it. We're not holding on with the abs too hard to keep it upright. Okay, so we're going to drop the chin and we're going to move the head through this kind of diagonal pattern. So we're going to move it up towards the shoulder. So I'm taking my left ear towards my left shoulder until I feel this stretch on the diagonal over here on the right side. And then I'm gonna take my right arm and just find the position with my collarbone where I feel that extreme. Then I'm gonna let my head kind of roll back toward the center, roll into that twist, or that stretch. Roll back to the center. We're pretty close. Roll into that stretch. And then I wanna find the point where it feels like I have the most stable place. So I feel the stretch from about this point right behind the jaw, kind of near the ear, all the way down to my collarbone. And you can move your collarbone back and forth. And we're just gonna hold that for a couple more breaths. Relax the shoulder, bring the arm back, and then I'm going to roll my head forward until I feel the stretch on this diagonal, okay? So from the base of the skull, right where these little ridgy bits are here in the back, down to the shoulder blade is where I want that to feel that. And again, I'm going to draw my shoulder blade down, and then I'm going to back this off a little bit, just kind of come back toward the shoulder, let it fall forward, pull the blade down, back off a little bit, and then I'm going to ease my way into that so I can hold it for a while. I don't want it to be so intense that it feels like I'm going to hurt myself, or that if there's any sort of numbness in the mouth or around the face at all, definitely back off. So let's try the other side and see what happens. So that I'm going to kind of loosen up that shoulder, give myself a little bit of movement, and then see if there's a difference. So the side of that I was working on, which was my right side, that shoulder feels like it's a little bit lower compared to this side, and the neck feels a little longer. So that's kind of the goal that I have in mind for any of these stretches, is when I'm holding them, I want them to have an effect that things get a little softer. So we're approaching it a little bit differently than we might do on another day, but we're getting the same area. So we're going to stretch this front side of the neck, we're going to stretch this back side at the kind of diagonal movement. Okay, so again, the reason that I'm doing this is because these two muscles are the muscles that stabilize the skull on the neck. So if we spend time where the head kind of, like when I use my computer, I tend to lean into it. So my head gets misaligned, right? And it might be that we get misaligned for other reasons too. Like poor, alignment in the seat when we're driving, all kinds of reasons, sleeping habits, whatever it might be. And again, this area of the back of our neck, and then as the nerves come out from the back of the neck and run toward the shoulder, is all a very sensitive, highly nervated, if that's enervated, area. So we want to be mindful of that. And for me, the best way to work with this area is just to focus on those two muscles rather than all of the other things. But that said, drop your chin back to the center, and we're going to roll the head around the shoulder until we feel that stretch right there. And it's really just, it can be the barest hint of a stretch. It doesn't have to be intense. So we're there, okay? So we're going to take the head just kind of a little bit forward and then a little bit back, and I'm going to draw the collarbone down. I'm going to lighten that up, go a little bit forward so I don't feel that stretch again, and then come back to the stretch, okay? And then we're going to come in one more time, kind of let it relax, and then I'm going to go for the stretch, and now I'm really going to let myself go for it. So I'm pulling the collarbone down, and again, I want the stretch to be manageable. So if I feel any numbness or tingling in the shoulder, arm, in my face, I know to back off a little bit. Again, there's a lot of nerves here, and a lot of the nerves that are responsible for our parasympathetic response, our ability to relax, also come to the face and run down through these little channels in the arm. So just being respectful of the nervous system's complexity here. Okay, so we're going to let that go. I'm going to roll my head forward. So now I'm going after this muscle that's on this side, connects the back of the skull to the shoulder blade. So I'm going to draw the shoulder blade down and then let the head fall forward at this diagonal. Then I'm going to back it off, even lift the shoulder blade a little bit. And then pull it down, let the head go off on that diagonal. And then release it a little bit, and then one more time. Now I'm going to hold that steady. So I'm drawing the shoulder blade down, letting the head fall forward and to the diagonal. Again, I'm feeling out this little muscle area right back here in the back. I'm trying not to be too pinchy up here in the front. It's a balancing act, y'all. So 2 more breaths. All right, so first I'm going to bring my shoulder back, and then I'm going to take my head to the center, and then I'm going to float it up. There's lots of different ways to kind of get to these same areas. We're just trying to shake it up. So every day we try a little tiny bit different, or at least every week, so that we're not developing any habitual responses in this same area. So notice, like, does your left shoulder feel like it's closer to where your right shoulder is? Now we're going to do this little action of hunching the shoulders up toward the ears and then letting them fall. And you don't have to be too dramatic about it. Just kind of hunch them up and let them go. Hunch them up, let them go. Hunch them up, let them go. Okay. All right, so we did some work for our shoulders. We've done some work for our neck. We did some work for our hips. We're going to continue into the little hips and a little bit into our back. So we'll start with the legs out in a V. Now again, you might stay sitting up on your blanket. For me, it's better to put the blanket under my knees at this point, so that's what I'm gonna do. Okay. All right. So with the legs out wide, I'm going to just pause for a moment and pick a side. So I'm going to go to my right side first. So I'm going to bend my left knee. So I'm going to start by twisting over to the left, and this is all about my spine. So at the point where I feel my right sit bone lift off the ground, I'm going to stop twisting. So I'm just going to pause there so my right sit bone stays heavy, and the spine gets a little taller, and then whatever amount of twist I've got is what I've got. Now I want to honor the twisting area of my low back and just let that stay steady, but we're going to move the shoulders a little bit. So I'm going to take this right shoulder, okay, right leg is straight. I'm going to take the right shoulder forward and draw the left shoulder backwards into its little pocket, like I'm trying to slide it into a pocket under the right shoulder, and then loosen that up. And then right shoulder forward, left shoulder blade goes down. And loosen it up. And right shoulder forward, left shoulder blade down. Oh, it feels good. Loosen it up. And this is all for my upper back. So I'm going to hold that position. Right shoulder forward, left shoulder down. Sit up tall. And then I'm going to turn my head to the left shoulder. And then back to the right shoulder. And to the left shoulder. And back to the right shoulder. And then one more time. And leaving it over my right shoulder, I'm gonna rescue my water bottle holder. And then I'm gonna unwind this whole thing. Sometimes your coworkers gather around your water bottle. All right, so now I'm gonna side bend over to this right side. So just kind of letting myself stay with this slight diagonal. I'm gonna side bend over. I'm gonna feel a lot of sensation maybe on that left side. You might as well. Well, depending on which side you've gone toward. And so if I lean a little forward into it, it's different than if I peel myself all the way around the back. And so you can explore the pose. Ooh, I'm liking that today. You can explore the pose and sort of find a spot that you like. Two more breaths. And then we're going to come all the way up. Oh. Rinse out your legs. Rinse out your back. Oh. Give yourself a moment. Okay, so I'm gonna do the other side. So left leg is out in the V shape, and then I just bent the right knee. Adjust the padding so everybody's happy, and we're gonna turn. So again, I'm gonna twist towards my right. At the point where I feel my right sit bone start to shift the weight, I wanna come back and pause right there. So I've just got my lower back twisting. I'm not anchoring my left sit bone to the floor. I'm just allowing gravity to do that part of the work. Now the right shoulder blade is gonna go down and in, and this left shoulder blade is gonna come forward and up. And then we're gonna let that go. Right shoulder blade down and in, left shoulder blade forward and up. Let that go. And I'm not really so much trying to twist myself more as I'm just trying to get movement in my upper back with the twist. What happens when I twist is I give my shoulder blades a little bit bigger range of motion because I've moved where the spine is. And it sort of pulls them a little bit away from the back so you can get to the muscles underneath them a little bit. Oh, it feels good. So shoulder blade down, and then I'm gonna hold it. So that right shoulder blade is gonna go down and in. This left shoulder blade is gonna come forward and up. And then I'm gonna turn my head over the right shoulder, and then over the left, and over the right. And when you're ready, over the left. And then over the right, over the left. One more time. And then I'm just gonna hold it here on this side. And one more big, tall, big breath. And then I'm gonna come out a little bit, just enough to sort of let everything get softer, and then I'm side bending over to the left. Still a little bit in that turn. And again, it might be better to have almost more like your belly closer to the thigh, or maybe you peel it all the way up so that you're as far back as you can go. There's a lot of range in between. And I just explore. Every day it's a little different, like which muscles are tighter and what feels better. One big breath. Coming all the way up. Let it all relax. So you can jiggle out your legs, jiggle out your spine a little bit. Okay, so we're gonna go back like a little cat and forward, so there's kind of that sense of the cobra opening up around the top of the chest. Go back, and then go forward and open. And I'm leaning my pelvis into this as well, so there's a little bit of a back bend, and then a little bit of that rounded back position. Just rotating back and forth. Okay, one more like that. And then we're gonna kind of sit up to the center and do this little just washing machine action. And then pause in the center. We're gonna see if we can make a little circle just with the rib cage. And this may not work out, that the ribs will circle independently, but we'll do our best. And then circle the ribs the other way. If we have a lot of tension, or we have a lot of movement barriers in the middle of the spine, this can be really tricky. Just do your best. All right. Believe it or not, we have arrived at time for Shavasana. So we're gonna get ourselves comfy. I'm gonna use this blanket under my head. I'm gonna use a pillow that I've got handy here under my legs. And we're just gonna give ourselves a chance to totally relax. So nothing tugging or pulling, just, we'll do our best anyway, given the circumstances. So, you can take, if you've got a blanket handy and you are comfortable with one under your head, I love to do this at the end. So grab the edges of the blanket and with your arms lift your head. Let your head stay heavy and then just give it one more little twist by pulling on the edges of the blanket. And my head is just laying in the blanket and going along for the ride. And it might be that your blanket needs to be a little bit sticky so that your head doesn't just slide around. And then put it back down and adjust as needed. And then, take one leg and just give it a little shimmy as you straighten it out, and then the other one. Give your hips a little shimmy, get them just right. Woo. Hi there. And then let yourself relax as best you can. So can we come back to an awareness of the breath very sweetly and gently? And again, can we sort of approach that awareness with a sense of wonder and a sense of gratitude for the breath? Take a big, huge breath. Let go with a big sigh. Wiggle your fingers and toes. Reach out your fingers and your toes. Reach out through your arms and legs. Oh, and then you can curl into a ball and give yourself a little hug. Roll to the side. Now, I like to hang out for just a breath or two on my side before coming up. It just feels nice to have a little transition. A little transition zone. Thank you so much for joining me here this morning. Let's take a big breath together. Nice inhale. Sigh with gratitude. Thanks, breath. Thank you. Namaste, yogis.